There are people out there who hate the fact that they've had children, but that can increase exponentially when they feel like they hate the fact that they had a disabled child. Hi, my name is Dr. Natalie Jones. I'm a licensed therapist. And I know this is a bit of a taboo topic to talk about, but there's a lot of people out there that feel resentful when they had a child who is disabled, who has a lot of health problems or requires a lot of care. And a lot of times when someone requires a lot of care, there's a lot of financial expenses that go into that. There's also a lot of emotional and physical labor, and just you have to give up a certain amount of um, your time in your life to focus on caring for them. And there's people, there's parents that become very resentful of that, but they don't express it necessarily out loud because it's taboo, and they feel like they would be looked at unfavorably. And if you don't believe Dr. Jones, go to Google and type this topic up, and there's a whole Reddit subreddit thread that is devoted to people talking about they hate their children. They hate their children who have autism, who are in a wheelchair, who have, that are nonverbal and that require 24/7 round the clock care. There's people that are very openly and very candidly talking about this experience on the internet. There's also people who haven't quite had children yet, but they hate the idea of having a disabled child. No one, they feel like no one would want that. And so they take steps in their fertility to make sure, they go through all this testing and whatnot, and to make sure that their child doesn't have any sort of disabilities as much as medically possible, because they have the idea that I want my child to be perfect, no flaws. I think this can certainly be an experience for people for a number of reasons. Just for people who feel like they hate the fact that they had a disabled child. Um, so number one, I think people may struggle with this notion more if they don't have a village, if they don't have people to support them emotionally, so they can get stuck in caregiver mode 24/7, and they don't really get a break from that. That's all they are, as a caregiver. Plus, number two, I think, with money and expenses and things, just financial expenses, a lot of times, uh, stuff for disabilities isn't always covered by insurance, and other resources. And every disability is different. Number three, people may have had an idea about a disability at the beginning, but then as things progress or get worse, it really starts to take its emotional toll. And for it, caring for someone who has a disability is really a selfless act. You have to be available for that person, and sometimes it may be for the rest of their life. And it also may require you to give up some aspects of your life, or of things that you maybe have wanted to pursue. And sometimes that can come in between a relationship where people have different ideas. One such example might be, whether or not to care for a child at home, or to put a child in an institution where they have caregivers, so that you can get some reprieve. But a lot of times when people do that, there is an immense amount of guilt that goes along with that. And it's like, I feel like that was my responsibility. So they may struggle with different feelings around that. And then, when caring for a child, and a child may act out, or they may have an accident or do something, and you're already stretched thin emotionally, There are people who may lash out at their children physically, emotionally, or verbally because they're at their wits' end, they're tired, and they don't have the option to not take care of that child. Or at least that's how they look at it. But they're tired, they're stressed, and they're overwhelmed, and they feel like nobody cares or there's nobody that they can go to with this. If you are feeling this way about your child, where you feel resentful, maybe even content, and like you hate having to do this, I would encourage you to go to therapy. Caregiver burnout is real. You know, idealism is also a very real thing where you thought you would have this ideal child and then you're disappointed by the fact that you do not. So I would definitely encourage you to talk to somebody, and maybe even talk about some decisions that maybe you hadn't thought of. And then also, in terms of working on building a community for yourself, one that is very supportive. So, for example, if you have a child with cerebral palsy, it might be a good idea to join a support group of other people who have children with cerebral palsy. And that's just an example. And a lot of this stuff you can find online. There's Facebook groups and things like that for any of you who are still on Facebook. And therapy can also help in case you're a single parent, because a lot of times you may have entered into a relationship or marriage thinking that both of you are going to care for a child, and then one of you has left the nest and said, you know what, I don't want to be bothered with this anymore. I feel like this was a movie with Halle Berry. The reverse can also be true as well, and that is a child who has to care for disabled parents. So that's also a very real possibility. If you have a parent with a severe mental illness or severe physical or cognitive ailment, this is also true. I've seen this a lot with people who have parents with dementia, and their parents often revert to being very childlike and requiring 24/7 care. So I hope this helps. Thanks so much for listening to it. And I know it's a taboo subject. Feel free, if it's triggering to you. I probably should have said this at the beginning to skip ahead, but people do struggle with this. This is a very real thing. Thanks so much.